what the true mu and true proportion would be? Got me?
Yes.
This time we're focusing on the true mu and true proportion, and then also we're going to go into defining what the null and alternative hypothesis is. Okay? How do y'all feel on that? Okay? So real quick, let's do the first one just to make sure that we're okay, and then we're going to go into today's stuff. So you should have gotten the null and the alternative, right? Remember, the null is you're innocent till proven guilty, right? All right? Okay, yeah. So when you do it, remember, it's either true P or true mu. When we're talking about me, which is the first one, we're going to say our mu is 115. Okay? Now, the counter argument of that is that mu, it says she suspects that they have better attitudes, meaning that she thinks the counter argument would be that it's what? Greater than 115. Now, a couple things you need to know. These two numbers will always be the same. Always. Okay? So for the null and the alternative, note that they're always the same. The null will always be equal to. So there's a claim that it's equal to this. This can be greater than, less than, or not equal to. Sarah?
On that part, do we have to write that in sentence form, or can we just say our code will be this around how it is?
This is perfect. I love that. Just be sure that when you do this, like I saw in Jaden's, I'm just showing y'all's. Y'all's are perfect. But make sure that you also define what mu is, right? So mu is the true mean of scores. All right, let's hold it just for a second, all right, y'all? The true mean of scores what? For all U.S. college students over what? Because it says, I think it's, over 30.
Over 30.
Or 30 or more, right? 30 or more. And that's what we're looking at there, okay? All right, the second one, make sure that you say that P is equal to 0.12, and the alternative would be that P is not equal to 0.12, okay? Not equal. Questions on those two? Cool. Are we good back there? Any other questions? Do y'all feel good on this part? All right, awesome. Do this. Grab a seat real quick. We're going to hustle through this next part. If you are kind of at a weird angle, I'm going to give you the freedom to kind of either turn a desk around or bring a chair kind of forward. If we could just put them back where we left off, and that way we can use it for my pre-cal as well. Okay? Awesome.
Bye. It's fun while it lasted.
Oh, Chloe abandoned y'all.
I think Shane was the problem.
I hear it. You may. Okay, as we talk through this, oh man, have you ever feel like your voice is like weird? I don't know. If you're like congested. It's like trying to talk, you're like, that's how it feels. Yeah.
You ever listen back on your podcast?
100%.
They're gonna be like,
I don't
no,
listen to
I've
myself.
never done that.
The worst part is when with my study sessions, I'll go through and like accidentally watch one, and like the stuff I say on there, I'm like, I'm weird. Like I'm officially like I'm loco a little bit. That's okay. All right.
Oh, he's not low dogs.
Y'all didn't like defend me like, Coach. No, you're not low. Like you're supposed to be like, no, like you're not.
Your sight reading video was funny. Say you're not low.
Okay, you're
I
not
got you, Jane. I got you. All right, here we go. So, hey, as we go through this, let's quickly go through this idea of Coach Jay's example. Remember the 90%, all right, of this idea of what is the null. The null hypothesis for this activity was what? We're just quick.
P.
By the way, I take out your notes. The last notes you have. P is equal to what?
0.9.
0.9, right? And your alternative, you said, Coach, you're a liar, right? Basically is what Jaden said. And this was saying, again, the numbers are the same. P is what? Less than. Good. Okay? Where P is the true proportion of Coach J's free throw percentage, right? Or probability. Okay? Good. Question. And this is a big deal. There are two options that we can do with this. Okay? If our p-value is less than our alpha level, what do we do?
You raise.
If p-value is less than our alpha level, which traditionally is 0.05, right? what can we do? It's statistically significant, therefore we reject a...
Oh!
Reject that hoe.
Oh my word, that was really intense there.
Yeah,
Chloe's like, yeah, reject that. I'm okay, I got you.
Okay.
The null.
Right?
Alright.
Okay.
So we reject it, okay? Alright, really just 2 seconds. We reject it. Sorry. As we look at this, we also have the p-value could be what? Not just less than, it could also be greater than. In this case, what do we say? We reject up here, down below we say we...
Uh-oh.
Accepted. Is it gonna restart? It's done.
It's that. It's that home to be rejected.
Yeah, it's Dino. Look at you right there.
Or do teachers have it too?
Why are you?
What?
So they just watch.
Only certain teachers.
Ooh.
Oh.
No, they all have them.
So you're on the list.
Okay. All right, Lord, please help this come up. I would like, please help this come up.
She's one of the bad ones.
All right.
Yes.
Naughty teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Ew, why did you say
All right. Good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry about that.
What's wrong with naughty?
All right, let's see. Pull this up.
Do that.
I'm naughty.
Let's just a freak out.
Do some pre-cal here. Oh man, if that erased that. All right, I think this is good.
It's like,
What?
I feel like you were in a little hat. Who?
Wow.
Yuck at me. Yuck at me.
I mean,
All right, as I was saying. Yes, you may. Okay, back at it. If the p-value is less or greater than our alpha level, this is important. What do we say?
We say.
Fail to
Accept
reject.
it.
You said statistically significant on top. This would be not statistically significant.
error.
So we actually say we failed to reject.
Fail to reject. So doesn't that mean accept?
Yeah, but you can't.
Okay, you
say
gotta be
accept.
careful. Gotta be careful on this, okay? Remember the gender discrimination case? Remember we said in that situation that it was not statistically significant? That did not mean that gender discrimination did not occur. Let me say that again. Let me backtrack. In our situation with the activity where I was shooting free throws, because we failed to reject, that doesn't mean, this is a test question. I'm making the test now, test question. If we failed to reject, that doesn't mean that the null is true. Or for y'all, whatever y'all call it, okay? All right, so it's either we reject it or we fail to reject it, but we can't ever say that that this is definitively true. Am I making sense on that? Okay, Lindsay.
How can you like reject it? Because like if you can't accept it, I feel like.
Because it's statistically significant, right? Like it's less than 0.05, then that percentage is so small that to happen purely by chance, it's rare. Does that make sense? Now, we can't ever be 100% sure, right?
Yeah.
But, and you'll see in a second, if it's less than, then we would say that we have reason to believe that we can reject the null.
Oh!
And then, therefore, if we reject the null, in that case, we accept the alternative, that it's less than 90. Okay? I can say hi. That's fine. All right? Good. All right, here we go. Hey, real quick, we talked about this the other day, right? I told you this is a tough concept. In fact, I've slowed this lesson down because it is a little bit tricky, okay? So we're not going to try to double up today. The idea of today is just simply going through type 1, type 2, okay? So we don't have too much, so just really focus in and dial in, okay? We talked about this idea of the water, right? And we said that on part 3, since the p-value was less than our alpha level, we said what?
We do not have convincing evidence.
Hold up, backtrack. If it's less than,
We do.
remember, think of that as really rare. Therefore, we do have convincing evidence to reject the...
Oh!
Good. Does that make sense? Okay, that's aged good for that. I'm sorry. Yes, that's right, but no, okay? So yes, when you go up here, we rejected it based off this p-value, right? Okay? So we do have convincing evidence to reject the fact that mu is equal to 70, and therefore we accept that the mu is actually greater than 70. Because that it's greater than 70, we talked about bottled water, and therefore, because we found that it was statistically significant, what would you do?
You would switch to bottom line.
Switch to bottled water, right? So you would buy bottled water for the people within this county. Why? because we are statistically significant based off this p-value that mu is greater than 70. We accept this, we reject the top, okay? That's a huge concept. If you're good, say uh-huh. Someone did not, or a couple of you did not. Are we okay?
So we reject the null, and then we accept the. Okay.
Now, if it was, and actually we're going to get there. I'm going to hold off that, okay? Is everyone good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to number 4, okay? This is the, I think you're still on the first page, right? Really, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the big parts here, okay? So really dial in. This is the new part. I want to make sure we really hit this, okay? Ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions. All right, let's suppose this decision was wrong, okay? It was wrong, the fact that it should have been statistically significant, because can we ever be 100% sure? No, okay? We just have reason to believe it, to reject the null, right? The question that I have is, what would be a consequence of going to bottled water based on our statistics? Chris, do you have a, and it could be anything that's practical.
Maybe like just based on our statistics, like consequence of going to bottled water.
Yeah, so if I went to bottled water, right, and I said, you know what, as the county governor or whatever, county mayor, right, we're going to bottled water based off of this evidence, right? But in reality, the water was 70 or less than, right?
The consequence would be it's going to cost more money now that you go to bottled water.
Good, so we wasted money on bottled water when the PFAS level was good, okay? Nicely done. Does anyone know what type of air we call that?
Oh, type.
So this is where we reject the
Oh.
null, oh my, and
The type 1,
the null was true.
so it's type 1.
That's a great job, Chloe. This is called type 1. Okay?
Nice job, Chloe.
Good. Did I give you a ticket? That's good. Good, Chloe. It's called type 1 error. So it's where we reject the null, but the truth was that the null was true. Okay? All right. Questions on that? I think we hit that a little yesterday. Okay, Tony?
Like we rejected no, what that's
Here's what I will say, okay? We rejected the null, and the truth, though, was maybe when they looked at it late years and years later, they came back, right, and said, you know what, we did more research, and it was actually true. Does that make sense? You wouldn't know it in the moment. Do you hear what I'm saying? Okay, cool. Cool. Number 5, given the water is safe, okay? So coming back to number 4, how often will this error occur? Well, what's my alpha level? 5%, right? So we would say that in this situation, 5% of the time, we get statistically significant values purely by chance. Okay?
Wait, how is the alpha level determined?
It's given to you.
Oh,
Great question. Traditionally, if it's not, 5%, 0.05, okay? So we would just say that, you say, well, what are we talking about? The probability a type 1 error will occur, error, is equal to whatever my alpha level percentage is, okay? So let me go back to my free throw illustration, okay? When I did that, when I shot free throws, one of the classes actually said that to reject the null, right? That I'm not a 0.9% free throw shooter. But let's say I come back and say, you know what? We've done more research years and years later that I actually am a 90% free throw shooter. But they rejected it, right? The probability that error will occur is the percentage of my alpha level, 5%. Okay?
So there's a 5% chance that you are actually.
There's a 5% chance that you rejected the null, but the null is actually true. In the illustration, there's a 5% chance that you say, Coach, you're not a 90% free throw shooter based on the p-value, right?
Also a 5% chance that you are.
Not necessarily.
It's like, is
It's a
that
little-
determined? Like,
it wouldn't be like the margin of error, because like that's different, but like that's determining that there will be, like there's a possibility, there's a 5% chance that you actually are.
There's a 5% chance that I actually. There's a. I want to make sure I'm careful. It only relates to the type 1 error, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So alpha only relates to type 1 error.
Alpha percent level only relates to probability or to type 1 error. Exactly. Type 2 is different. Does that make sense? So the probability that I reject the null, but the null is true, 5%, or whatever my alpha level is. Does that make sense? If I go to Shane and I say, Shane, a better hitter than Acuna, and he's a Braves player, okay? And I do data on that, and I compare that. And I find that, you know what? It's statistically significant that Shane is. He's a better hitter. I just go with it. But in reality, he's not. That error is 5% that I would be wrong.
But only for type 1.
Only type 1. Perfect. Does that make sense? Okay? All right, here we go. Thanks for the questions, because I know it can be tricky. Number 6. We're going quick. Suppose the p-value was 0.15. Here we go. Should the town keep the current water or switch to bottled water? Okay, I like this. Let's conclude that, right? That's good, Sarah. Because
Because our p-value isn't below
This is something
0.05,
serious.
we should not switch to bottled water because our value is not statistically significant.
bingo. Okay. How are we doing so far?
Good.
Is it okay? I think this is sticky. Sarah, you rock that. I like it. So I would say because our p-value is 0.14 and is above 0.05, okay, we do or do not have convincing evidence. We do not have convincing evidence. Evidence to say the water is unsafe. Okay? Here's a question. Coming back to the original. Because this p-value is 0.14, does that mean the water's safe?
No.
Good. Yeah, you see how that's kind of applied, right? We just don't have what? Convincing evidence. And I keep hitting this because this is a huge, huge concept from here on out, okay? And I love, by the way, I love your focus today. This is awesome because it's really important, okay? So this right here is true. Therefore, let's say because we do not have convincing evidence, to save money, we're not going to go to bottled water. We're just going to go to our current water, okay? So we will stay with our current water, okay? All right, you're going to see why this is important, okay? All right, is everyone good so far? All right, let's go to number 7. Let's suppose the decision's wrong. What would be a consequence? And by the way, right over here, we rejected or failed to reject on 6. Failed to reject. Good. Failed to reject. Suppose the decision's wrong. What would be a consequence of this error, Brianna?
People get sick.
Yes. People get sick. They die. PFAS is serious, right? So we would say people will die horrible, miserable, long life of misery.
Painful.
I'm sorry, this is bad. All right, they're going to get sick, right? They're going to get sick. They're going to get sick there, okay? So people will die horrible, miserable, long. I don't know where I was going with that. They're going to get sick, okay? Possible.
Keep our doctors busy.
That's true.
You're making them money.
That's right. And if you have an under-the-table thing with the doctors, where you get a certain percentage, it might benefit you.
Oh my god.
Now you're totally
Statistics can be used for everything. I'm joking. Tony,
Wait, this type 2 error,
this is called type 2 error. Exactly.
like how often will this error occur?
The probability, you're not old enough yet for that one.
Oh.
Cool? Is that cool?
Are we
All right.
saying,
Just not old enough yet. Type 1 error, just know that it's the alpha level. Type 2 error, you're not there yet, okay? You just need to know how it's applied and the consequence of it, okay? So remember over here, it's important, on this side, we have the, we failed to reject the null, but The alternative is true.
What does that first one say, Christian?
So we failed to reject the null, but the alternative is true. Okay? All right? Does that make sense?
Failing to reject. We're basically saying it could happen, but not here.
It says it's possible, but we do not have convincing evidence to reject. Cool? Same thing, 90% free throw shooter, right? Okay? Or even Shane's illustration with Acuna, right? If we fail to reject the fact that Acuna's better or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean Shane's better. It just means that we don't have enough evidence. Okay? You like that one? Just thought about that. All right, number 8, last one. Here we go. Your focus is great. Are the consequences, here's the big thing, okay? If I'm looking at these, which one would you choose? If you were to have an error, if you were to have some sort of error, 7 or 4? Which one would be more serious? More serious. I was like, what's going down? Number 7.
I thought you were gonna say which one would you rather have? Yeah.
Number 7.
Jaden would say.
All right, here we go, right here. You get 8 tickets if you answer this next one. You got to raise your hand. Number 7 would, and we know that, right? Can you tell me then what you might want to do with the alpha level because of this? And then why? Shane, you want to kind of expand on that?
You'd want to make the alpha level higher, because like there's more of a chance that you be inside the alpha level and get more of a chance you get statistically significant. Because it's something serious like this, you'd want to be like more certain.
I think you explained it right. I think that it was the wrong first answer. Does that make sense? Wrong first answer. Jacqueline, did you have something?
The alpha level would have to be smaller.
We want it smaller, right? Why?
But it has to be smaller to, for us to be able to make sure that it's not statistically significant.
Wouldn't you want to change it over to bottled water?
Hold up real quick. I just confused myself. If I go to a .01,
Then you would keep the good water more of the time.
Yeah.
scratch what I just said. Yeah, I would say, yeah, Shane, you're exactly right. And if you didn't get that question, the idea was, what is the most more serious one? Number 7, right? Number 7 would be compared to number 4. Really, that's what you need to know. Although Shane's answer, you're not old enough yet to kind of go into that. We will. He said to make the alpha level higher, but I don't want to confuse you on that. His answer was actually right, okay? But I don't want to confuse you. Here's what you need to know. Number 7 is the consequence that would be the more serious one, right? So if we were to have an error, which one would we want to have?
I mean, wait, 4, yeah.
What's that?
We want
The
more.
4 one, right? Which is what error?
Waste
I'd
money.
rather have type 1 error
Oh.
than type 2. What, does that make sense? So if I was going to go more towards one side, more towards type 1 than type 2.
Oh, so we're
Okay.
not really
I
looking.
thought you were gonna
Okay,
look
I was kind of looking at like the actual like words, like
Oh no.
dying versus wasting money. So, but when we're looking at like which one we'd rather have, we're looking at like type of error, and type 1 is better than type 2.
Always
Yes.
want type 1.
In this situation, we would lean more towards favoring type 1 error. If we were going to have an error, let's go more towards type 1 error than type 2. I'd rather waste money than have people be sick, possibly die, and that sort of thing.
I think it's gonna rub off.
If you, depending upon what your motive is, absolutely.
You're also gonna drink the water though, so.
I wonder if they give it to you on an AP.
In conclusion, don't drink
Conclusions,
that.
everyone's back.
All right, so real quick, I want you to know where we get a p-value. This is quick. Right here, this was our true mu, right? That was what was given. Let me show you how a p-value's discussed. By the way, what type of distribution is this? This is going to be a sampling. We'll talk more about this later, where you got mu and sigma. Notice this is our sample, right? That's our sample that was given. The p-value is the area that is shaded, okay? If this has an area that is what? It's what area would we have to be statistically significant? To the left, very good, and anything that's on the right side would be less than 5%. Does that make sense? I wanted you to see the visual of how we do that. We're comparing our sample to our true mu. Okay? All right, we're going to be heading into this later. I just wanted you to see it. Okay? You're confused there?
Yes.
Okay, this is what was given. You get me on that? This is my sample. So what I'm doing is I'm saying from this shaded area over here, remember the p-value that we keep talking about? That's how we get it. So when we're going to run this normal CDF stuff, which we'll do later, when I find normal CDF here, if this is greater than 0.05, then we fail to reject.
Mhm.
But if it's less than 0.05, this is the area that's in here, that area that's shaded is called our p-value.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I just wanted you to see a picture of what it could be, okay? All right, do this for me. With someone around you, actually do this. Get the golden nugget real quick, okay? Get the golden nugget real fast there.
We can take a picture of it. Just Garner took my notes.
Is she
Why
really?
did you take that?
Yeah, because I had them out when we were taking the quiz and I didn't need to.
Gotcha. Do you want me to get another one?
Oh.
Yeah, fit perfect.
No, I'll take one. I'll take this one. What was he
No.
saying?
That's
What
weird.
Where does this go?
I just wanted you to
I know, he
get
told
it
us to
down,
write it.
okay?
Could you?
I
I
used
think
up all my space. 'Cause we were like,
Oh.
right there's some Makoto.
I did. I lied. I lied. It's true. It's true.
Gucci, how's your baby doing?
Yesterday he's struggling a little bit. He's not walking yet, and so we were. I had to discipline him yesterday.
What?
Is he crawling yet?
What's that?
Is he crawling?
No, I told him. I'm like, you can't do that.
How old is he?
He's 2 months old. It's about time.
Shouldn't you be talking
Is it
right now?
really?
No.
Poor baby's so crawling.
I gave him a spanking yesterday for
Hey,
that.
he should be
No,
doing
I'm joking. I'm joking. No, he's great.
I think you
You
should be
should be
talking.
doing AP stat right now.
I know.
Full
I
sentence.
know.
Because he's born at Christmas, does that mean he's gonna get like double birthday and Christmas are gonna like intersect now?
They're gonna be combined.
Oh, you can make.
I
You're
hate
gonna
that.
save
You
so
have to have
much
them
on
separate.
I know. It's a win.
No.
No.
I feel so bad for
way,
those
no.
kids.
Me too.
You feel bad for him?
Yes.
Yeah.
He'll be okay. He'll live. Yes.
Thank
Yeah, he'll get
I
pregnant.
think he'll live.
But not
So
enough.
it's yeah, not enough. There's two
No,
times
like
a
you
year.
need 2 times exactly.
Yeah.
One in the spring.
Mine
The fact
in
that
September
he'll live in a
is-
consumeristic society and won't get like 3 extra gifts. He'll be fine.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that was
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just messing with you.
When are you gonna
No, we
tell-
will. We'll keep this separate, Jade.
When are you gonna tell them that Santa
Oh, we've already said it.
Santa's
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we've already said it.
That's so terrible.
Wait, to your little girl?
Yeah. I got her a gift. I spent my money. I want to get the credit, right?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You're
Oh,
very well.
Jaden?
Why did a bunch of teachers? Where did a bunch of teachers go? Like today, Like, Coach She's
He's
gone.
They
and,
like went on a
Yeah,
bus
that's-
and drove away.
I have no idea.
band camp. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, that's fun.
Oh,
But
that's
no,
fun.
they left
Okay.
already.
No, wait, it was
There's
a
30
random
people
group
with
of
them.
people. It was like Miss Roberts,
Yeah.
Mr. House, Coach G.
Okay.
Coach G's gone.
Maybe this is
I thought I saw you on the bus.
Maybe, yeah.
Were you on the bus this morning?
I was not. No.
Miss Waldron's on
Was-
that bus.
I saw a little.
Okay, here's the thing.
I saw a little man.
Hey, I want you to rep this out. Okay? Here's what I need from you. Either I would go back to the boards maybe you were at. If you want to maybe divide up into different groups, I'm fine with that. I need you to go ahead and attack the check your understanding. If you could go through 1 through 4 and make sure that you hit this. Here's the thing. I'm making sure I emphasize this. This is a test, like almost identical to this test question for next block day. Okay? We'll talk more about that on Monday. But go ahead and attack this real quick. Make sure you write everything in context. That way you get some reps on that, and then go from there, okay? All right, I'm going to give you like 7 minutes, and then we'll go over parts of it, okay? Ready? Let's go.
Wait.
Break.
Your fingers were on
No,
the
it's
Hop right into it, because we don't have very long. We have like 11 minutes. Jaden, I was messing with you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're-
I was probably took that too long.
Everyone had asked, so they didn't even notice my
You're not in our group.
I was gonna say, I wasn't even on Friday.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Namaste.
Namaste.
I don't know why I said
I
that.
don't know why I said that.
Alright. You don't get what?
I don't understand the arrow.
Okay, so.
Remember, what is the type one here?
Okay,
Okay, go back to the golden nugget, right? What does it say?
Null hypothesis is true. But we need to
The hoe
Okay, so what does it say? I want to make sure. Null hypothesis is true.
Wait, P equals what?
So we reject it. Here's what happened on type 1, right?
P is less than 0.6.
We reject null, but null is true. Okay, so let's talk about that. We reject the fact that P is equal to 0.63, but it in fact is true, right? All right, so let's read in context what this is. We're talking about drive-through lines, right? So we're saying, the manager is saying that, I'm making sure I was reading it earlier today. Yes, you may.
We accept the hoe. Type 1 is.
Okay, so he's trying to reduce the amount of cars that have to wait at least longer than 2 minutes, right? Okay? He's saying that it's less than 0.63, right? The null is that it is 6.63 for his restaurant, right? Because that's like the average proportion there. So the question is this. When we look at it, if I reject this, accepting the alternative, however, the null is true, right? So we reject the fact that the true proportion was 0.63, accepting this bottom part, that it was less than. But in reality, the null was actually true. It really was 0.63. That's how you would describe it in context.
What?
Longer than 2 minutes? That's a long time. Where did that do? Should know those.
And is that
Well, 2 minutes, like 1 minute 30. Less than. During lunch, it's like 30 seconds.
yeah? Wait,
We gotta move.
Michael, did you just talk it over, Jack?
Sure.
He doesn't
Which one
understand
do
it
we have?
either.
Do you not understand it?
We'll find out.
But the
Okay, together. Number 2.
we failed to
Type 2.
Number
Okay, so
two.
we're describing type 2
Okay,
error.
number
What is
two.
type
What type
2
of error is
The
more
alternative
serious?
hypothesis is true.
Yeah.
So we made the wrong decision.
Oh,
So that would be where we
We
accept
accept
something.
something. So if we accepted the ha,
That would be wrong. So we
Is there
made
anyone
the
that
wrong
doesn't get
decision.
this?
It's hard to word.
we haven't gone very far.
Okay, so we know that the type 1 is rejecting the null, but the null is true, right? Just talk to me in context with that. So we reject, if I was doing this one, I would reject that
But it,
the true proportion
It's 0.63.
of people waiting longer than 2 minutes is the null 0.63 when in reality it is what?
Less than. Or no.
It is true. Meaning that the true one was that this was true. Does that make sense?
so if you're adding.
Alright, keep going here. Type 2. Does that make sense?
No.
This you
It doesn't
hold up,
make
Jacqueline.
any sense.
This right here. This right here. Do you understand that?
Yeah, but I don't understand your explanation.
Well, what is the null?
Yeah, it equals 0.63.
Good. The true. And you got. Here's the thing. You got to read the top, right? This is more not like this content. This is more reading comprehension, right? So remember, the P refers to the true proportion of customers that wait longer than 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, sometimes
That's what that means. So when we say we reject the null, that means we reject the fact that the true proportion of those that wait longer than 2 minutes is 0.63, but when in reality it is true.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Basically, I'm just saying this. I'm just putting context.
Because having an extra word.
And the alternative would be the opposite, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So just memorizing.
You are great.
Literally, that's what it is. Just with context, right?
So it's how, but how is true. So that's where we said how was true. That's where we said we did not say how, but all of a sudden it's true.
Yeah, I think so.
Type 1.
Check that, so add another equality, right?
This Carter. No, she just took them and I forgot to
Type
grab
2
them.
is the opposite. It's
She was
only
like,
failed to
this is
reject the
oh,
how,
it's psychology and math. And she was like,
but the how.
And this one, the consequences, I think I'm okay. I think it's less than 0.63, but in reality it's not, right? So because of that, I make no changes, and therefore I.
For type 1 error, like we already rejected no, so we add another employee, so we waste money.
Yeah, on type 1?
Yeah.
Yes.
But type 2 is like the no is actually true, but we failed.
He's a timeout. We have time. He's a good time.
So for type 2 error, is that like no is actually true, but we failed to reject.
What were you looking at, map?
Yes.
So basically we just fail to reject it, then we just make customer like wait longer. So customers
I think
rather
we should reject it.
call bad, right?
Look at this.
Okay, the answer is no. It's number 3.
Why don't you say? Don't you remember?
Oh,
Hey, as you're doing this, go ahead and check with what's behind me too. Look at your paper, and then once you want to check the answers, go ahead and check this behind me as well. All right, Jacqueline, do you want to see this? These are the answers. I don't know if this helps you.
I used to forget to write my name on my
I don't understand the context. Like, I don't understand how to put it like that. Like, I said the proportion of people, of the customers waiting longer than 2 minutes is 0.63 is rejected, but it's true.
Correct. That's perfect.
But you wrote it differently.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but it's the same. So what did we say? We rejected the fact that this was true, right? If we reject, we're accepting. We think, this is what we think. We think the proportion's less than 0.63. But in reality, it's what? 0.63. Does that make sense? Good. Keep staying with it, y'all. Keep staying with it. Is that okay? Jacqueline, am I making any sense?
No, I don't understand.
Do this. Shane and Michael, could y'all talk it over with Jacqueline? Because I'm not helping. Could y'all help it?
Michael doesn't understand it either.
Okay, that was me. I wasn't.
None of us get it.
I was at.
I got it.
Okay, it's just memorization. I can help.
Okay, but in the context, like,
You
I
ignore
don't.
context. We just need to
I
memorize
need
it
to
and
know
then
the
fit it in.
context. I can't do context. I can memorize the formula, but what we want to do is context.
Okay.
I do not understand. We said it until 3.
So we
You're
wrote
good
this
on
down
two,
to the
right?
hoe. We wrote this down to
Type
the
1
hoe.
error is the one that's there, right?
Reject the hoe. What was the
Based on your question, do you agree with the company's choice of 0.10?
Yes, I added an E.
Gotcha.
No, seriously. So we failed to. We're talking about saying we failed to reject the hoe. We failed to reject 0.63 of who has to wait long. We
Which
failed
is
to
the
reject
worst? Which is the
proportion of
worst
people
one?
who wait
Type
more than
1,
2
right?
minutes. 0.63.
So if I do not
But
want to type
give me the
1
wrong
in, right?
decision.
What is the probability of type 1?
So the ha.
It's the fish, right?
Yep, it's the alpha level, right? Which is traditionally 0.05.
I thought it was 0.1. Oh wait, no, never mind.
Exactly, you're right. It's traditionally here, but it's actually 0.10, right? But if the type 1 error is the one I'm like, I do not want. I don't want type 1, okay? I want that probability of this happening to be as low as possible. So instead of being 0.10, what would I make that alpha level? I can't make it 0, because it's got to be the level I compare my p-value to, right?
You can just make it be anything.
Well, traditionally it's 3, 0.01, 0.05, or 0.10, right? So what would I want to do with that 0.10? Or 0.01. I want it to decrease. Why? Because the probability of type 1 error, I want it to
So you can only make it either 0.10, 0.01, or 0.05.
traditionally those are the 3 that you see.
Okay.
So I would say I just need to, what they're saying is we want to decrease the alpha level, decrease it, because we want to minimize the probability of type 1 error occurring. Why? Because it's the most serious one.
Let's get a message.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my. Scared. Hey, y'all have a great day.
Bully.
Highlight this. If you're confused on this, come and see me Monday or Tuesday morning, okay? Make sure that you come and see me on that. How'd that feel?
I'm really confused. I don't
See, I'm gonna walk with you.
like I was with you, so
Yay.
I talked about it.
Yay.
Then I didn't. Why are you saying I didn't?
Yay. It's opposite day.
So go ahead and try.
Yeah.
Try
Don't
the
you hate
answers
those
are of the
Actually,
homework are online.
Because
I think the homework's due Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Hey, homework's due Sunday, just so you know. But when you go through, there's some practice ones. Go through and check it, and on Monday or Tuesday morning, come by. Because some people, this takes a second.
Okay.
It's more the context of it, and you understand what type 1 and type 2 are. You're just gonna have to really kind of tune in on
Yeah.
that.
Okay. And then did you figure out what?
Did
Did you figure out the time of my test? Were you able to check that out?
That's you, coach.
I have not yet. I need to.
No, you're fine.
So Monday, see you, Tony. Yeah, Monday or Tuesday
Bye,
morning.
Coach
I'll
Jay.
look at it. Still busy.
Do you have my test so you can grade it?
Did, yeah, it's on the right side for yours. One to get yours because yours was the first one done. I thought it was pretty good. You did a good job. So feel free to correct those multiple choice questions.
Yeah.
And we'll move from there, okay?
Okay.
Cool.
And then also, I have a